Yeah, let's just go for it.
Yep.
Dan, I will keep the chat at the lookout in the chat, and if anybody else is joining, but maybe you would start with a brief introduction, Dan, with yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for enjoying us to come here for joining us this morning here for Q&A for United Designers, our course and our strategies. Really appreciate you coming. We have a really good show out here, and we have, I'm sure, more people that will be joining us. My name is Daniel Halsey. I'm the co-founder of United Designers with Rushka Kierkegaard. Actually right now I'm in Colorado working on a project here. I travel all over the United States and the world doing design work, and for the last few years, I've just been focusing on the United States, traveling back and forth in my little RV, which has been great. And I'm just really happy to have you all here. Being the founder of United Designers and starting it over 10 years ago now as an idea with another group that I was involved with. It's really come together well, and really appreciate your time today.
Nice, thank you. So also briefly, guys, so I'm Verushka Kierkegaard, the other half of the founders. I am based in the Netherlands, and next to Wageningen, which is known by Jasmine, who's also here. So I am usually very much busy with everything going around in Europe, and logically, Dan very much with everything going around happening in North America. And the very big projects, we come together as a team and see how we can select the teams best suitable with the skills for those projects. So I would like for Ryan to briefly introduce himself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ryan. I currently am in southern Spain, in between Almeria and Motril. I have a farm and retreat center, and my farm's the La Loma Viva Foundation, where we hold workshops and do research on syntropic agriculture, hold retreats and trainings, and working on an internship program. And yeah, very happy to be here and a student of United Designers. So
Thank you. Thank you. And Jax.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Jax. I'm in the US. I'm in Colorado as well. And I am a student here with UD because I second launched my second regenerative design business a couple months ago. And I was in dire need of digital design instruction. I'm not new to landscape design, but I'm definitely new to digital design. So that's why I'm here. I like to focus on native plants, building habitat, and food forestry.
Thank you. So Dan, maybe you would give a brief. Oh yeah, Ryan, you wanted to
yeah,
add to that. Sorry, yeah.
yeah, just why I joined United Designers was I've got a permaculture background, having practiced it for over almost I think 15 years now, and I was scouring the internet to see if I could find some sort of digital platform or course I could do, and then United Designers popped up, and it was such relief to find a really professional digital platform that I could work with, and it's been very good so far.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And also for everybody else, when we move into the Q&As in a bit, if you feel there's something you want to ask Ryan or Jax, that's also why they're here. So feel free. Dan, would you give us a brief introduction of the course?
Right, sure. So just to back up a little bit with the origin and the history of United Designers. So basically, it's around 2014, coming up with the idea and being kind of frustrated with being as generally as a message in permaculture is kind of that lone wolf, sort of everybody out doing their thing, independent designers, things like that. And I had been working with a number of designers since 2009, traveling the country because I had developed this Illustrator program for myself. I actually was a food photographer and package designer for 25 years, and I had used Illustrator, of course, in that. And so when I shifted over to ecological design around 2008, it just was a natural for me to use Adobe Illustrator and basically use those skills to develop a landscape design system using that. And in the process, and working with a landscape architecture intern, we were doing this. And he's at a master's in landscape architecture, so they didn't learn anything about plants. They didn't learn anything about ecological design, which I thought was very interesting. But we sat down one day and said, okay, we've been doing this for months. Let's get this down in a process. And so we just went through what our process was that we had been iterating so many times. And that's what turned out to be the United Designers process also, which is a variation of the landscape design process that a lot of people use, except we're using it for ecological function and human uses and things like that from an ecological perspective. So that was 2014. The nice thing that worked out also was the fact that once we were digital, we could share files. And we started sharing files with a number of different people. And again, that's one of the foundations of United Designers, is that as you're working together with us or with one of the designers, we share everything. And we have the course, United Designers course, which is 9 modules. And when you get into the course, you get your own student folder. You get access to United Designers library of images and symbols and templates, things like that. And that starts our collaboration. And that's what United Designers is all about. So we focus on regenerative landscaping. We focus on permaculture design and good ecological design. But even one of our bigger focuses is working as a community. And we share our fee sheets. We share our plant lists. We share all of our what's called the data table, all our ecological information with each other. And building those files is what's made us quite strong. And then also this network of designers now that we've been building for the last 10 years across the world means that we never have to say no to a project. Whatever comes in for any of the designers, you can always say yes, because you have a dozen people behind you, at least, that would be happy to help you with that. And especially if they have their specialty or their expertise in an area that you don't, that's why we work as teams. And we've done some really great projects that way, 6,000 acres, say in Haiti. And we've had 5 designers working on the same project at the same time in Illustrator. And that's where the layers come in. And that's where the benefit of working with Illustrator and why we use that as our platform. So our design, kind of our philosophy, of course, is working together, working with ecological functions, systems thinking, things like that. But also the fact that we're working together in doing Adobe Illustrator. And I have to say that way back in pencil days, which seems kind of funny, 2009, when I did my first pencil class, everything was in pencil. And I was already working on Illustrator, but it wasn't really a system that other people could use until we really had it kind of down to a system and where we could teach it. And then in 2018, I was in the Netherlands and met with Verushka there. She hired me to come there. We taught for a couple of weeks. We actually taught a week of pencil and then a week of Illustrator. But over time now, pencil has just kind of faded away because we've really solidified our process. We have a design process that we all use, all the phases, all the time. And since we have this repeatable process, Adobe Illustrator has become very strong in that as our go-to software platform for doing that work. Yeah. So it's scalable. And as you'll learn in the course, if you take that or you start working with us, it doesn't matter if we're on a 1/4 acre or 6,000 acres, Adobe Illustrator and our design process works for that, whether it's ecological watershed or it's a homestead design. That's where we work together, and we have a really good system to put that together. What am I missing, Verushka?
No,
Anything
you're not
else?
missing anything. What I do think is very valuable and different from many of the trainings that are out there. There's a lot of awesome trainings out there, but I think what Dan is also emphasizing all the time is the team component. We have almost every week, unless somebody is on a site and the other is sick, but Dan and I do this together. Every week at this time on Thursday, we have a live check-in, so an open classroom. Live. So people can bring in their questions on ecology, on how to write a report, on how to offer a quote, on how is the graphic side of the course going. So it's not just course related. Sometimes we just talk about the weather or politics, God forbid, but it happens. So that live class check-in is a very valuable component, which remains also if you become a member later. And otherwise, as you said, Dan, we have a phased approach that is very much recognized within our network, which is also taught. You work accurately in scale, of course, so you can communicate across borders with engineers and architects to have the same language, so you're taken more serious, especially when you present your work. With Illustrator, you can stack all the information, all the layering of the data that we get from drone flights and QGIS and what have you. And yeah, I think that's about it, what we have. Teamwork for us is one of the most important pillars. So everything's built around that.
Right.
So maybe we can
I think I mentioned too.
Yeah.
I'll go on. And just Rushka brought up our chat. So in 2019, we recorded our first course and put that online. We're now on 3.0. This is our third version of the course. Improvements every time. But what I'm amazed is every Thursday at 9 a.m. Central in the US and then across the world since 2020, February of 2020, when COVID started, we were going 3 times a week. We're all kind of like, okay, we're kind of stuck. And so we started talking 3 times a week, which was just amazing. And then as things loosened up and people got back to work, we just settled on this Thursday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, doing that. And that's been going on for 5 years. And it has been absolutely amazing. I look forward to it every week. People from all across in Europe, the United States, Canada, Asia, all over, talking about the issues of what's going on in the world, but also focusing on our design work, sharing our files. Aud was on a couple weeks ago showing video of her waterworks and her watershed works there on her property. Jax has been showing her design, Ryan the same way, I myself. So we're all showing our design work to each other. And I can't stress enough that the graphics that we create from our, basically our common style and our attention to detail for United Designers is now recognized. Everybody can see a United Designers design and they know, right off the bat, because we have a style and a look to it.
Yeah.
And that's come over time, but also the fact that then when we share that, we all are working on a similar style, similar scale, working on the same platform. And that's what makes it so easy for us to share the files, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we do a design. When I do a bunch of design symbols for my project, they'll go into the library. I think there's 450 symbols in our symbol library for Adobe Illustrator, not to mention 4,500 plants in the plant database that we use, and always adding plants to that too from our project. So it's our teamwork with United Designers has been very helpful in building assets.
Dan, maybe we could, thank you so much. Maybe we can ask, I know Isabel, you said you might need to leave. Are there any pressing questions you would want to ask us before you have to leave?
Not particularly, because I've actually come in at this from a different angle. I have followed United Designers for a while on LinkedIn, but I'm actually not a permaculture designer. I'm just a designer. Like,
okay.
Yeah, like Illustrator expert. So I was just coming in because I was interested to hear more about what it was about.
Okay, that's awesome. We do actually have quite a few designers, as you say, that have made that turn in their professional life later on. Yeah, so you wouldn't be the first.
I do basically like brand design and other design for in like sort of regenerative industries.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I followed you guys. I see some of what you talk about. This was pretty much just me coming in to hear firsthand.
Oh, that's awesome. No, but to give you an example, I'm working now in the again, as we're constantly stressing networking, right? Let's build bridges and help each other. I now have a lady here in the Netherlands whose work is graphic designer, but she specializes in making storyboards and landscapes. So when I have a project in the Netherlands that's public, and she makes illustrations around the walking paths and, with the birds and the things, that's her thing. And she does an amazing job. So that's also often we have a lot of add-ons that also keep us connected in this field. So that's very cool. Definitely. Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks to you guys.
You're welcome. Elias just joined us. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Yasmin, you were also very eager to join us. You're muted.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I just recently came across you guys. I'm a student at Wageningen studying regenerative agriculture, and I was just curious about what you guys have done because a lot of my coursework has kind of focused on design. But I'm more in the research side of things and have honestly very little creativity in my soul, but it's something I'm a bit interested in, and would like to know how to like visualize it better. So I was just interested in tuning in, but I have, to be honest, a lot of questions just relating to the work you guys do and less so of the course. So I don't know if that's an appropriate time now, but
I think it is. Dan, you agree?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I
go
just wanted to
ahead.
mention too, when you mentioned research, because we're using Adobe Illustrator, I'm sure you probably wouldn't be surprised. Even though we're using it for our designs, we do a lot of illustration. We do diagrams, we do flow charts, we do all sorts of, you might say, added and supportive documentation for our reports, all done in Adobe Illustrator. Veruska is a great designer. Sylvia, who I work with, we're all visual people, and we use Illustrator for a lot of things more than just the design itself, especially when we're doing reports, because we have to explain things. And a lot of times we are the explainers of a lot for people that we're working with, whether they're, Nature Conservancy or the Sierra Club or people like that that are trying to work with their people. We are hired to actually help be intermediaries to explain what the processes are and also what the science is, because everything we're doing is science based also. But yeah, please ask questions.
And also, if I may just add to that, Jasmine, you said you're not creative. However, the study that you were following, I'm sure at a certain point you would be what we would call an adequate consultant. You know what to do, right, in these regenerative agriculture systems. And we also work with a lot of people that say, you know what, behind the computer, the graphic stuff, that's not for me, but they really know what they're doing. So we work together to translate their decisions into graphics. Some choose to do both, but it's not a prerequisite to do this work that you have to be able to do both. So your knowledge is also very much valued. And often it's a very good pair with younger designers that we have that are very skilled graphically, but don't really have the mileage on the actual knowledge. And that can also be a good pairing if you have a client or a project to get things going.
all right. Yeah, makes sense. Nice. I am curious, when you guys start a product or meeting a new client or potential client, what are some of the most important questions you ask to get what they want, their vision across?
Yeah,
Oh,
well, we have a whole we have a client interview sheet. We have a number of these that help guide the conversation. It's not like it's a test for people, but it's for us to use, kind of like a cheat sheet. And a lot of times we'll skip questions. We're just trying to find out what their perspective is, what they want to do, what their motivation is, what their intentions are. But one of the most important questions that comes up all the time, right away, earlier the better, is if they have site control. And that's come up in the past where people want to do all these things, and you find out, well, actually, they're only part of a group, or they actually don't own the land that they're on, things like that. So it's kind of important to find out who the decision maker is. And this goes with really any business, right? When you're working with somebody, is are you the decision maker? And it's really tough, but is there a budget for this? What are your intentions and what's your timeline? And for us too, for a lot of times working with homestead people or even developers, whatever, is what is the profit model here? Does our design work have to involve income streams, right? So there's a lot of questions like that we go down in our interview sheet that help us define the client, what their purposes are, and then also our job is to go define the landscape. So we can find out what their intentions are, what their trajectory is, where they'd like to go. But now we need to bring those two things together with the environment. And that's where they hire us to help interpret their landscape and their ecology.
and also, if I could add to that, it's also what we also do a lot because we have almost every client, they really try to get a cookie cutter answer like, okay, what is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? And we really try to stress that that's completely impossible for us to do before a preliminary site assessment and a lot of talks. But to add to what Dan says, we also try to understand what is the people's knowledge of the land, their own knowledge of that land, and the skill sets available or not available to do what we want to do. Because everything that is missing, we see it as our chore to fill in those gaps. And that is very much determining, of course, a final investment also in time. And are they realistic about the successions of the system? Does somebody have a cornfield like we have here in Holland and they want it to be a thriving food forest? We need them to understand the realistic succession period. So, does that answer it a little bit, Jasmine, or can we add there?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And anything
Keep
else?
asking away. If you have questions, you can also put them in the chat if you have questions, and we can monitor that too, so you don't have to be online.
So I'll go with Go. I have a Go here. Hi, Go. Does a comprehensive permaculture ownership require land rights, mineral rights, and/or sky rights, like butterfly migration preservation? Wow, good question. That's on you, Dan.
That's a really good question, because especially where I am right now and where I've been, water rights are huge. Mineral rights are a big deal also. So it's funny where you can own a piece of land, but you actually don't own what's underneath it. And what when it rains on your property, what can you do with the water? All of those things have come to go ahead with a lot of our design work. So you have to find out that in advance. So I'm in Colorado. What are the state laws? What are the county ordinances? Things like that on what you can do is really important to find out. In Texas, gray water systems, things like that. It's actually state law and state guidelines for doing gray water, whereas in other states of the U.S., it's totally illegal. You can't do anything with it. And in some states, rainwater is considered gray water. So, you really have to find out what the legal aspects are, the restrictions, things like that. And by the way, we call them design drivers. We don't have limitations. We have design drivers. Okay. Our design is going to model what that takes. In the process, though, of doing that, we've had some great conversations. And I myself, with people from government saying, well, this policy means this, but it needs to be written in a way that actually is not so limiting to people so that they can actually, and they can use the water and they can do a lot of things, but they don't know that. It's just that they can't take it away from the system, something like that. So mineral and sky rights and things like that. There's even ordinances about sunlight. You can't shade somebody else's property if they have solar panels and things like that. So those local ordinances are good. And by the way, I work a lot and I travel a lot. So for me, I'm going in ignorant to most situations, which I actually enjoy. So because I get to learn a lot. But then I have to really integrate with the local people, the local designers, checking in with the local permaculture groups and other people like that to find out what are all these details.
Go has just added to the chat, Dan. I'm seeing data centers polluting a lot of streams. It's getting heartbreaking. I'm hoping water rights can somehow combat pollution by means of land, water, mineral, and sky rights. Something we hear very often, unfortunately, and often a discussion of in our live check-ins. We talk about what's happening everywhere around the world in regards to climate mitigation, pollution. It's good to inform each other live with the people that are actually living it instead of the news. It often has its discrepancies. I have another question from Isabel. You're welcome, Go. I need to head out. Oh yeah, thanks for this. It's been interesting, even though I'm not able to stay. Okay, Spain, visitors, your land. Okay, see you. Have a good one, Isabel. She's leaving. Okay, was not a question. If anybody wants to ask Ryan Boda, who's also here, Syntropic specialist in Spain, or Jax McRae from earlier, also please let us know, or we will just keep on rambling.
I have a question.
Nice.
Sure.
Hi. Veruska, I came across one of the modules in the Ecoversity in PDC, in the PDC that I just finished.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I'm pretty new in this field. I'm trying to connect my digital advertising background with this new, like 18 years working with digital advertising and connecting with this new path. I loved your module, by the way. You brought a lot of insight things. And one of the things that you mentioned is like in the beginning of your career, you did a lot of courses like this and this and this and this. what I'm missing that I want to learn from any of you is how can I connect this all these projects, these design projects, with the field experience, because this is what I'm missing right now. You know, I know that I can design. I use Inkscape instead of Illustrator, but I used Illustrator back in the college. But I'm kind of missing practical experience to connect with the designs that I can produce. I know that I can do a beautiful drawings and you know, like the ideas based on what I learned right now in Ecoversity, but how can I get this field experience to really, you know, produce this like deep designs, like not only like
Mhm.
beautiful in the paper, but also that works in the field.
Can I take this one, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Um, I think that what you were touching on is probably one of the main drivers that Dan and I started United Designers, because Dan has done it a lot longer than I have. I've been in it now almost 10 years, so I'm pretty new. Dan has already passed the 20, and many of our colleagues for many, many years. But it's especially when you start down this rabbit hole. I also, as just suggested, I sit next to Wageningen University. I have a lot of students contacting me. How do I get into this work? First of all, what we always try to advise is have one thing that you're really good at that is used in this realm, whether it's making graphics or doing drone imagery and stitching and making contours, or lab results from the soil food web. You know, there's all these different components that we as designers need along the way to make our designs even better. And if you have that one thing, then you can come into a project. Generally, what we do with us, because we can't, and that maybe sounds a bit off, but we can't just say everybody, oh, come in, because we don't have that much work. So we have this process. That's why we have our training, so that everybody kind of knows the process. So we can skip the introductions on how we work together. You know, so that's also what it is for, so that we all know that we have this process. And for instance, we have a lot of younger people that are nowadays incredibly skilled with sales and marketing, right? Way ahead of us. But they don't really have the actual knowledge. They're just really passionate. So they just sell. And then they come in and they say, I've got a client. Awesome. What do you need? And then we put again together the team around that person. So they start making mileage on practical knowledge, right?
Right.
It's the same. Have you heard of Georgy Pavlov? He's very big in making just graphic 3D interpretation for clients in our field. So that's also just somebody adding to that specific thing. Am I answering it a little bit, Fabrizio?
Yes, yes, and it's great that you mentioned that because I'm going through. I met. I don't know if you have met Andrew Turtle from Edge Perma from here. He also did a lecture in the Ecoversity, and I'm
Yeah.
going through this drone imaging. I'm taking the part of 107, like the certificate. But that's great that you mentioned that because it's all right. And how much
But then again,
the
if before I forget, Fabrizio, there's
okay.
one thing there, because the thing with those small skills, technical skills, like it's a drone stitching or drone flying or soil food web, lab results, graphic support, like we have Dan mentioned, Sylvia makes these beautiful drawings, 3D and all this stuff. One thing to remember, and I think I hammered down on it quite a bit in the Ecoversity talk, is it's usually not going to pay your bills. And that is, it's unfortunately, but it is a way of entry. So you start making the mileage. And we need to repeat this often, because we have so many people that are very disillusioned that they can't make ends meet. It's like we always need to have something on the sign. Either you're an implementer or a garden architect or often implementers, or you have a nursery, or the bigger things that pay the bills. But to get into this design work, it's often with the smaller skills that you can come into the bigger teams, right?
Right.
Dan, do you want to add to
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, I would. One of the things that I always tell people is expertise and mileage. So having your specialty of something that you know a lot about can get you in. Something that other designers need. Like in my case, back in the early 2000s, because I was fast and basically pretty good at Illustrator, I was hired by other designers to put their ideas, their concepts into paper at that time, into Illustrator. And we would sit with a big screen and I project it and they'd be pointing and drawing on a whiteboard and we'd be putting our designs together. And that's how I got a lot of mileage from other designers more famous than myself at the time, working with them, traveling the country, doing a lot of work. And that was mileage, that was expertise, right? And so now what's happened, even a number of our students have done this to go through the course. They've got projects themselves, they actually have work, and they're using the course and a paying project to actually pay for the course and then also learn all of the different processes that we have. So getting involved with people in a small scale, like Rushia is saying, kind of an entry level way to get in, you're offering something, but then at the same time, like with us, you get exposure to everything. So if I'm working with Mike Lynn, who is watershed restoration or estuaries, or Ross, who's in New York City, who is a licensed landscape architect, right? When I work with them, I'm also learning all about their specialty at the same time. So there's the breadth and the depth of what we're trying to learn as we do this. And every time you do a project, you get more and more broad in your experience, but you also get the depth in every one of those phases and every one of those pieces. When I work with Mike Hagwood, who's a pasture, excuse me, meadow and grazing and pasture revitalization expert, right? I've learned so much from him about the plants and how you take this field and all the things you have to do to get it back to a point where they can put animals on it, right? The science behind it. So that's a really good way to learn is mileage. Do as many projects as you can at the time. And even if you want to do something, and Jax might be able to mention this too, is if you're trying to go in a certain direction of work, whether it's being watershed, whether it's being homesteads, is to do the work. Find the work to do it. And even if it's not a paying job, find something that you want to work on because you need to have evidence of your expertise.
Yeah.
And when it comes to social media or websites, you have to have examples of the work. And if you can create that, like I did too. I was working for a lot of nonprofits. I worked for USAID, Nature Conservancy, people like that, just to get the work. And some which is basically just, I didn't get paid at all. I just traveled for them to do the work for them, which was great. International travel, all paid for, not a problem. Want to go to Nepal?
Mhm.
There you go, right? Kind of great. But that was at that point that international work then was opening up more work that was actually paid. And it doesn't really cost you anything but time to go into Illustrator, get your aerials, get your maps going, and get the examples to show people what you can do. And for us, it's the graphics that are our biggest marketing tool.
Yeah.
So, Jax, can you talk a little bit about
No, sorry,
your
Dan,
focus?
sorry, Fabricio still had a few questions.
Oh, okay.
I interrupted him, sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, I just did this. Like I loved what he said. Like I just
Oh,
did it.
Oh,
Yes.
no, I thought you wanted to ask another question. Apologies,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, I did want to add to that, Dan, before we go to Jax then. Fabrizio, I think the best example of what Dan says, something we don't say often, but that is my role. Because I took Dan's course. I was earning on the side doing my studies on soil, food, web, and permaculture and anything doing marketing. And I was a very good salesperson. And I just sold the jobs. I went to Dan and I said, here's a project. Can I tag along? And we did that for quite a while. And then I started putting on, as Dan says, my naughty pants and said, I can build your brand and your website. And here we are, so many years later.
mm-hmm.
So that was, I also came in from a complete different direction. And I had to work for years alongside Daniel and many other colleagues that are way more experienced before I could carry my own load. So it is an endeavor of passion for sure. So
That's great.
yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah,
Welcome to
you're
you.
welcome. Dan, your question to Jax. Apologies for the
Yeah. So Jack, so just if you could, you're in the course and you've done some homestead work, but also focusing more on your passion, which is maybe the ranch design, which is a larger scale, broad acre. And how do you see that difference? Or how do you see that change with working with the software?
Yeah, so right when I started the course at the beginning of April, I had also just landed my first client that has an acre property. And so I've been using, kind of like Dan said, which is actually so cool. I didn't think of it that way. It was like basically what she's paying me is what I paid for the course. So that's cool. I'm getting paid to learn. If you do that though, and have a paying client to learn the course with, I highly recommend having no deadlines on your project because I had deadlines, and that has made it more stressful than it needed to be. But it's been great to have a paying client to do the course with. And like Dan is saying, my real passion is in, yeah, doing bigger projects. I grew up as a cowgirl and I love horses and I want to do regenerative ranching projects. And I didn't grow up on a ranch. I don't have that experience. And so to do some of the stuff in the course, which I feel like doesn't really apply to the property that I have for my client, like the hydrology and the contour lines and things like that. I just looked around Colorado and picked a ranch that I thought looked really interesting and was doing cool things. And they don't know it yet, but I'm building them a base map. And at some point, I think I actually will reach out to them and, see if maybe a trade could be possible because they do a lot of cool stuff at that ranch that I would like to be a part of. But it's been really great. And like Dan's saying, it's going to be cool because it's like I'm using the project for my practice for the course to do the different assignments. And then also, I will have a beautiful base map at the end that I can put on my website and say that this is something I do. And something that's been really cool to learn is like back to the team aspect that they were talking about at the beginning is like, it's exciting to think of that because I have really thought of myself as a one woman show before this. And it's like, but I could like actually take a ranch now with the team of United designers behind me and with Mike that does silvopasture or other people in their skill sets. And so that to me is really exciting because if I was just doing this work on my own, I think it would take many more years before I'd be able to do the ranches that I really want to do. But I think I can, with integrity say that I can do that soon because of the team aspect of it all. So I find that to be really exciting and just a way to move my career forward in a way that would take me years solo.
Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question here, Dan. I think it's a nice one from Olivier. What is your day-to-day like? Is this a family-friendly form of work? That's an interesting one. Would you like to answer, Dan, and maybe
Yeah.
both of us in
Well,
short?
and I was just telling somebody yesterday about this, is that I always say to people, I am so privileged to do the work that I do. I have been self-employed since I was 24, long time ago, right? A freelancer. I've always been a freelancer. And this kind of work is the same. I work when I want. I work when my energy is high. I'm not a 9 to 5. I might work till 2 in the morning. I might get up at 3 in the morning to do something that's on my mind. Then again, the afternoon, I might be doing something else. So it's my time when this works, and it's very family friendly. Um, I raised my 2 kids. My kids are gone. They're out doing their things at the same time. But I think that the parallel between being what I was a food photographer and package designer and what I'm doing now is very, very similar because it's my time. That being said, the discipline that it takes to get work done and not be distracted and know that you get paid for what you do, not for what you don't do, right? So you have to kind of focus what your work is, but also then you get to enjoy it. So I would say yes, very family friendly. I worked out of the home since 1996, which was a funny year because all of a sudden it was okay back in the mid 90s to work out of your house. Before then, you had to have a shingle, you had to have bricks and mortar place to be legitimate. That all went away. Even more now, working, I don't even have a house. It's like I'm just like traveling doing the work because people focus on what you can do rather than what you are and where you are and things like that. So I think it's extremely family friendly. Plus the fact that everything that I learned in permaculture and ecological design was on. I had a farm until 2021 was there also. So the things that I learned, I implemented in my own lifestyle gardening, fruit trees, grapes, you name it, all these things in permaculture. That's where I started, and that's what moved me into design. So I was a permaculture designer, learner since 1999. It wasn't until 2008 that I had an opportunity to say, I think I'm going to move into this as a profession. And I wanted to mention one thing too that Warushka mentioned um, earlier was, and this I have to say, I have to give credit to Jeff Lawton on this back in 2006. He recommended if you're in permaculture, you need 5 sources of revenue, 5 income streams to do things really well. And I think that's very important to know. Is not just depend like any farmer that things like that, or many of them, they have a lot of products, they have a lot of services. So there's design, there's consultation, I have the plant database, which was started in 2003. Those things, all of these are income streams, multiple income streams. A book that I wrote, the course that we're doing now. So that's another part of using and being diversity, not only in, like you say, what you plant and what you eat, but your lifestyle also needs to be diverse in the kinds of incomes that you generate in this. And so regenerative is not just the land, you have to regenerate your concepts, your innovation for yourself to create the income.
Thank you. I'd also like to add to that, Olivier, that what did I want to say? Yeah, what Dan said about income, as we mentioned earlier, that's a thing. But also when it comes to the design work, it's always project based. So you make a quote, you sell it, and you think, wow, huge number, great, and you plan 3 months, but then it always becomes 5 or 6, and then spread out. It's very little earnings at the end of the day. That is also another thing to relate to with the project based. It's good to have a steady income from something else. And when it comes to the day to day, I would say when you're on a project, it's run. You're all in, you're busy, and then in between it's a little bit slower. So it's very good to manage. I have 4 kids and 2 grandchildren now, and I can easily plan around, as Dan also said, because we're independent. And of course, that's the key, I think. And then the discipline and getting habitual in how you plan your things. But it's a lot of running when the projects are on, especially if they're bigger. And then there's a lot of lay time in between. So does that answer, Olivier?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's great to hear, and it's also very encouraging to hear as well. Somehow in my mind it seems complicated, so it's good to hear the examples and get your perspective on that. Thank you.
Nice, you're welcome. We actually have a lot of young dads, right, Dan?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a lot of
right,
young
right.
dads in the group.
And
So
that's and it's always been said that the secret weapon of a freelancer is a working spouse. Or partner. So that's also part of the community that makes it easier for that too, sharing the load. I kind of wanted to mention too, as we were kind of on the subject a little earlier, is that even though we talk about Adobe Illustrator and the technical part and the graphics and things like that, also in our design process, which you go through in the course, which we all do on every project, is the ecological design concepts and the ecological site assessment. So it's not just the graphics, it's not just the design. The whole design process is part of our course and part of United Designers. How to understand where you're working. We have an 8-page data table full of questions of all the things you need to know about a property. Whether it's an acre, whether it's 6,000, like I always say, you need to understand the ecological situation and context. So that's a huge part. And that's the first thing we do before we even touch the computer for doing any graphics is we're doing research. We're understanding the climate, the soils, the vegetation, all those kinds of things. And that's part of the course also is our design process. So I don't want to focus on the fact that it's just teaching you Adobe Illustrator. It's actually the whole United Designers process from start to finish.
yeah, very much so. Thank you, Dan. So any more questions out there so far?
If we
Yasmin?
could, I have a list of questions too that I've gotten in the past that we could go through if you like.
Yasmin
As
had a
people come
question.
up, maybe as I answer.
Yasmin had a question here first then, but that would be great
Okay.
afterwards.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, just one going off of the process from start to finish. Do you guys also, are you responsible sometimes for implementing the designs in the end, or do you have a role in that at all?
Depends. Sometimes some of our designers do both, and others work with other colleagues that can do so because it's very much depending on where we are in the world. I don't do implementation myself, but I know a lot of people. I love to work in the Mediterranean area, and there's a lot of people that are specialized in implementation. So I like to work with them. And the other hand, at Dan's end of the woods, there's a lot of, especially these young fathers we were talking about, they do both design and implementation. Sometimes Dan also is a coordinator of implementation. I have been so also on some projects here in the Netherlands. I coordinate, but we also have other people who handle the shovel. So it's very much depending. It's not a given. Yeah.
Right, right. So that's if you're working locally, and that's where, again, there's a lot of different formats where we're working as professionals. I travel, I work across the country. I find out who the local people are for specific tasks that need to be done. But many of my clients are homesteaders, individuals. They're going to do it themselves. They're going to be their own subcontractor, find people to do the work. I'm just consulting and helping them with the design and understanding where they are and what needs to be done. On the other hand, if you're a local designer and you're working in an area, the state, the region, you might have your relationships with installers, if not yourself, that you have in a trusted business relationship for them to do it. And I've done that too, which is really great because I need to focus on design. And like we talked about earlier, my income comes from design, not from installing. I did that, kind of been there, done that. On the other hand, like with Brandon, who's one of our designers, he has started a very extensive landscape design company up in the northwest of the US, right? He's hiring staff, he's hiring a crew. He actually has gone in that direction. He's building a landscape design and install company. So it all depends on your skill sets and what you want to do with that. I got out of implementation, but then again, the context of the people I work for are homesteaders, and it's over years of implementation doing the work. Now, the last thing I'll say, except when it comes to anything involving engineering, electrical, plumbing, or like say you're going to dig a pond, we get the pond guy. We get the local person with the excavator that understands how that's working. And that's better to create those local relationships with installers rather than just coming in and flying in and doing the work and not having the homesteader or the owner actually start a relationship with the local people that understand or are the experts.
I would like to add, thank you, Dan, a few things to that. First of all, Yasmin, I think out of experience, when we talk to young people, one of the safest bets for a decent income is installation work. But it's tough, of course. But it does generally, over the long period, it does reward better than design work initially. That being said, I have another beautiful question here from Olivier. Do you also teach about water earthworks for rainwater harvesting? So rainwater harvest design in Adobe and on the land. I'm glad you asked that, Olivier, because this is something we have kind of a disclaimer on our site, what our course is and what it isn't. And this is one thing where I can truthfully say it isn't, because this is a complete different animal. We have in our team, we have Neil Bertrando. You can also find him on our website, and he has a beautiful course, very affordable on low-tech erosion control in arid climates and larger context. And then, of course, there's the water stories from Zach Weiss on how to address the land with building ponds. These are specializations. We have several designers in our group that have this knowledge, even hydrologists. So we work together when this is the case, and we do show you how to do this representation graphically. And we discuss a lot, especially when our hydrologists are present in the group. It's awesome we can get that input, but it's not something we teach in the class itself. Dan, did you want to add to that?
Right. You know, when that stuff comes up is on our Thursday talks all the time. So when those specific engineering science questions come up, the designers will come online and we'll talk about it. And you'll get a huge amount of information. And a lot of times we record those, we share those with the students in the course. and with our other people part of United Designers too. So like when Aud was showing her videos from her work in Kenya, and then also I have work that I've been doing in Hawaii, we're all sharing that, but we're also sharing as, by the way, there's a lot of details to this. It's not just dig a trench and pile the soil. There's a lot of information you need to know before you start disturbing the land so you don't create a problem in that case. So those are the things that aren't part of this course because that's the science. What we're teaching is the process. What the process brings up is the questions. Then you have to go and find out locally, what is the situation? What soils do I have? As an example, soil plasticity, which is a huge thing when you're starting to disturb the soil, especially on slopes and things like that, is very important because if you're going to do water catchments, things like that, if the soil turns to liquid very quickly, you're going to have problems. That's an example of the science that's behind the design. And those are the things that we talk about in our group, but also things that you want to be assured about as you're doing the design work. So you don't put something in the landscape that actually doesn't work. And the whole Berman swale thing of permaculture, which is great, and I've used it a lot, is not applicable in many, many situations. You just don't touch it, right? Because of the soil type or it's sand or things like that. But there's always a variation of those strategies and tactics. And those are the things that we talk about in the background.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. This is again coming back to something that we keep hammering down on. Never do this work alone because if you get those bigger projects and it's something with a slope or degradation, you can actually make some very wrong choices and it can potentially even be dangerous or it can set people back with their income or their safety. So we try to have those discussions in the group, and otherwise we gather the people that have the actual knowledge for that context. That's very important. So don't do it on your own. Let's see. Anybody else?
Well, Rushka, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the course format, if I may, and maybe that will,
sure.
instill
Yeah.
some questions.
Yeah.
So the course, if you've seen it online, is 9 modules, starting with explaining the theory and the philosophies of permaculture, ecological design. Then it goes into site assessment. And all of these come with assignments that are real assignments, which are the exact same documentation and things that we do on our projects. So you go into site assessment, the data table, plant lists, things like that, assessing where you're working, those kinds of things. Then it moves on to actually then what the tools are and what Adobe Illustrator is, how it works, lots of practice sessions on there, each tool, each thing that we use. And with a lot of things with software, as you can imagine, what Adobe Illustrator is capable of doing is probably 10 times more than what we actually use. But if you're good at it and you understand it, you're going to find some pretty cool tools in there that you can play with and work. But we keep the course to the basic tools in order to get the job done. We call it kill it and bill it. Basically, get it done, get it looking good, and then maybe when it's, got nothing else to do, which is tough these days, it's like, then go play with some other tools and see what you can do. But in the course, we're focusing on the only tools that get this job done in order to show what we want to show and keeping it limited to that. You might plan on 4 or 5 hours a week. It might take you 6 weeks. It might take you 6 months. The subscriptions to the course are either a 6 month if you think that'll take it, or 1 year, and 2 different fees that we have for that. Everybody can extend, and people do that all the time. They do think they're going to get it done in 6 months. They don't. They can extend for a year. I have to say also that when you're part of taking the course and you have opportunities to talk to us on that, most people just stick around. Even if you're done with the course, people just stay on WhatsApp and they come in and show up, on Thursday morning, and that's what really pays off. So as soon as you take the course, as soon as you get things done, you really are part of the community, and everybody wants to get to know you, and that's your opportunity also to show what you can do and has opportunities for, working on projects with people too. So we are adding to the course now that in the end of the course, one of the questions that I've gotten to, there is a final project. So like any kind of really good design course, at the end, you need to have a finished design that you show to Warushka and I first, and then we go through it, what improvements might be done, talking about it, working through the details, and then you present that online on the Thursday to the rest of the people in UD so they can have questions. We call that, release the hounds. So, and it's one of those things, if you want to bring your design on where everybody's very professional, but they're going to ask questions. And that's not a bad thing. There are no illusions in United Designers. Everybody has to work in a realistic fashion. It can't just be pretty, which is what sometimes our work is called. It has to be functional, and it has to be based on science and implementable. So that's one of the things that comes at the end of the course. You get feedback from me. I'm available all the time. I talk to Jax probably on a more than once a week basis, right, on her projects and a lot of the students. So I'm around, Warushka's around to help people when things come up. And that's why we have a dynamic course too, because things will come up with a student. And I'm like, you're exactly right. I think I'm going to focus on, I'll do a video on that too, whatever that might be. And we'll add that to the course either now or the next iteration, or there'll be a comment with even in WhatsApp. We have WhatsApp for everybody to communicate on a daily basis, and we'll upload videos on that or upload questions to that so people get real-time access. So there's a lot of resources in real time, and then also our weekly one for that too.
Yeah, I just want to shout out,
Um,
Dan is a saint to work with. I just feel like, especially someone like me who had no background in digital design, I feel like I've avoided computers like the plague. And so I have a lot of questions. And I feel like I've taken other courses in the past, not specific to permaculture, but just in general. And it's like you take a 6-month course and you might get like a 30-minute talk with the teacher, like they're really regimented with their time. And Dan has just been so, so, so generous with his time and availability. And I really appreciate you for that.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Jax.
Well, that's,
All
and I
right.
have to say, with Rushka, myself, and Ross and Mike and all the people that show up, and Ryan, who's like here with us, Sam, who's here, regulars on our Thursday talk. This is passion for us, right? It's like you'd think we were all into cars, or we're all into, like cosplay or something. We're into design, we're into permaculture, and we talk about it all the time. You know, we do kind of sometimes sci-fi comes up and we go off the rails, but anyway. We're there with a passion talking about permaculture design, and we love it. And that's why we're still doing this. So any conversation I have with somebody about the course or design in general feeds my soul, but also helps me refine when I'm working with other people too.
Yeah, I want to add to that. What I also really love about it, what's both inspiring and also at times challenging, because we have so many designers across the world in so many different time zones. And I'm very proud to say a very large number of girls, ladies, women. I'm very proud of that. But what we often see, depending on a certain point, sometimes you come into a check-in and it's like the old man's club. It's only guys and it's only North America. And then it's talk on machines and driving and excavating and what have you. And other times it's a very European or feminine inspired group, and we have completely different talks and everything in between. So I really love that mixture myself on how it changes depending on who we have in the room, and there's space for it all, and that's the most important, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
if we don't have any questions from anybody, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about too. I haven't, with my background also, it's a little bit of like how UD started. So in 2008, I went back to I was in permaculture for almost 10 years before I decided, okay, there's a bunch of gaps here I need to fill. And I went back to the University of Minnesota, finished my old bachelor's degree, got a degree in temperate climate polycultures. I got to even call it what I wanted, and studied what I wanted. Then I got my master's degree in horticulture. And my master's was actually taking the landscape design program that they had at the university and spinning it on its side and saying, okay, let's take that process, but let's make it ecological, not aesthetics, not about color and balance and all those kinds of things and hardscaping and bricks, and let's make it ecological. So that was my foundation in doing the design work, and that is pretty much following through for everybody, is we're focusing on the ecology of a landscape, the regenerative design of a landscape. And basically, that's kind of the same, whether it's regenerative or it's ecological, ecological is regenerative. So every time we have these new terms coming in, it all comes back to nature. It all comes back to the feedback loop. And that's what we're creating in our design work and in our community. Everything keeps going around, and everything we do builds assets and builds knowledge. And as far as I know, the plants haven't really evolved that much in the last, 50 years. So everything we learn builds on everything we already know. And that's what's great about our design work.
Very true. Thank you. Jenny, all the way from Australia. Is there anything, just trying to round up Elias, you're there. You have to run. Okay, good to see you, Elias. Hope to see you soon again. Thank you for being here. Jenny from Australia.
Hello.
Hello. Did you have any questions?
Not at this point, thank you.
No? Okay. And Rosen, I know it was not the name, but behind Rosen. Allerton. Nope.
I'll take a couple things. If you want to ask questions about UD also and how we work,
Yeah.
we have a couple of very simple rules in getting in UD. One of them is either you hire us or we hire you. That's as it is. It's not a club. It's not it's not a social group. We basically are trying to create income for each other. And when we're working together, we have a fee sheet. All the budget is on there, and we divide up the tasks on this Excel spreadsheet. Who's doing what of all the tasks, what you're getting paid. Here's our budget. Here's how it's going to work. And by the way, when we have a project coming in, it's not real until there's a check. And we have a very serious relationship with our clients about how we get paid, when we get paid, so that everybody's got some skin in the game. We don't work for free. We don't work on spec, right? Things like that. But as soon as the money comes in, it's dispersed. We don't wait for people to get their work done. We expect the work to get done on time. And that's the responsibility that people have. So that's nice about, I think, with UD is when the money comes in, I want to get it to people. Everybody has bills to pay, and we work that way together. So everything is very transparent. Everything is on Dropbox. So we share the files, we share the research, we share the data tables, all those kinds of things together. And we work on budgets. And part of working with our fee sheet, and also as I work with designers, Sylvia and Maui and other people, there's also kind of the training to expect don't be afraid of big numbers. What can we charge for this? What can we expect? And then also we go through the proposals. This is not part of the course, but it's part of our chats on Thursday. We have examples of proposals that we give to the clients. And also, like we did recently, if they send us a contract, we went through this whole thing about indemnification and insurance. And that's, by the way, another thing with UD, we expect you to be legitimate. We don't work with companies. We only work with individuals. There is a number of permaculture, ecological design organizations that want to be a part of UD. And we say, that's great. Give us one person. We don't work with businesses. We work with people. And that is really, I think, the strength for us as we've done that. But also just wanted to reiterate, income is important. People have bills to pay, and we understand that. So as much as we are designers and we love the earth and we love ecology, it's also a business. And business rules don't change. Good business rules and good business practices doesn't matter if you're a shoemaker or you sell gasoline or if you do kombucha. Good business is good business across the board.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just see. Nobody else, anything to add? We also almost finished the hour. So indeed, anything else to ask about how we work for the course?
I had a question.
Nice.
Yeah, so I wrote it down, but I was just wondering, could you expand? You said earlier on about how this design process had become your biggest marketing tool. So I was just wondering whether you could speak a little bit about, how you came to realize that, what about the designs was getting clients really excited, and importantly, how you communicate the projects to lay people that aren't necessarily experienced with the ecological theory, precisely like why you're proposing certain things, like
what gets them excited about what you're communicating.
I would like
Sure.
to do a very brief introduction before you are the much better person to answer this, Dan. But I would like to add just in front of that, the reason that I took Dan's course many, many years ago is that I was doing the permaculture studies and trainings. I had already done 3 PDCs, as many of my colleagues, and that is almost always pencil. And some of us are really good at it and can make incredible things, but most of us aren't that gifted. Anyhow, you make pencil drawings. As soon as you move on to, or you have the ambition to move on to the really big landscapes, you're not going to be able to process all that data with a pencil. That's one. Secondly, if you want to knock on a door with a lot of investment with a pencil drawing is also not that good. So for me, it was the sensible thing to look towards Dan. I discovered his work because he was the only one in the field with the same ethics, the same schooling, the same objective, but with a process that could be laid over any design from the smallest to the biggest with this professional outlook and the same language as engineers and landscapers. So I just wanted to say that. Dan, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, to answer your question, I think that our phased work is what's important, and I don't know if we've mentioned it yet. So when we work with a client, we have 3 phases. And the first phase is site assessment. That's the base map, the data table, and the plant list, right? That's where we're finding out where they are. A lot of people, of course, don't know where they are. They don't understand any of these ecological processes, what soil is, things like that. And I have to tell you, the most fun is, and I do a lot of this work remotely. Most of us do. We start the project. We haven't even been to the site yet. I want to know what the site is before I get there, so I know what to look for. So go on Google Earth, or get some drone work, or whatever it might be from a county or the state or the country, and we build the base map, right? Then I go through the data table, and that's basically a big Word document. It has on the left side is like links to where you can find information. We have one for the Netherlands, the US, one for Canada. I think there might be one for Spain.
Oh, we have
And then the second column is what the questions are, and the third column is the answers. So when all of this work is done, I arrive at their place. We sit down. I have a projector or they have a TV, and we get my laptop out and we go through all those things. And I actually go to the fourth column then when I go through the data table and say, here are your soils. And the fourth column is, so what? Why is this important? What does this mean to me? And people really get jazzed learning about their site, right? This is what you have. We're not even into the concepts yet, not even into what they want to do, but though at least they understand you have this much rain, you have this much sun, you have these kinds of soils. What does that mean? You have this slope, it faces this way. And there's just a lot of advice and a lot of interpretation that goes talking about their land and what does that mean. And during that process, they're asking questions and their brain is already thinking about these things. So then we bring out the base map and just pointing it because the soil map is on there, the contours are on there. We point out things, they ask questions about things. So the education part for the client is very important so they understand, because if you can educate them on the realities of their environment and the context of their property, their decisions are going to change. Their assumptions and their expectations are also going to change. And now you actually are getting them excited. So phase 1 is site assessment. Phase 2 is concepting. And if I'm on a site, that usually phase 1 just blends into phase 2 within that same day or the next day. Now we talk about all these things that they think they want to do, right? All of these interpretations, these expectations. And our job is also to say, that's great. You have these 4 or 5 ideas. I've got a plant list here of 800 other ideas. These are also opportunities for that. Or, are we going to talk about chickens? Are we going to talk about livestock? Your garden space, by the way, like where I am now, there's only 10% humidity. The sun is 12% brighter. The UV is at 11, which is super high. Those are instances of information that they need to know because their decisions have to be based on the reality of it. And then the concepting starts. And while we're having these conversations at the kitchen table or wherever, all of these things come up and all of these things are explained as far as what the ecological function needs to be on their property. Or is water collection really serious? How are we going to do that? what are our opportunities. And the last thing I'll mention is, as we're doing this, by the way, we talk about drawing with our elbow. We're not talking details. We're just talking concepts. We're just talking about water collection is really important. There's a few ways that we can do that. There's this, and this, right? How we do it, that's later. We just need to talk about the big picture of what you're going to need in order to have the lifestyle that you're thinking you're going to have and what the adjustments are that might need to be made.
I wanted to add a few things there. Thank you, Dan. Also, as Dan said earlier, we are the storytellers. On our website, you see tons of examples of designs, but behind that, for each phase, we have very extensive reports, but we don't publish those many times because we are not allowed to from the client, but also because we want to keep that within the group. But very extensive reports that tell the story. So that creates enthusiasm. But then also, as Dan is touching on, education for us is very big. So we always from the start try to tell the people or the owners that we are educating the future stewards of the land. So we really take them along with these processes because we don't want to just come there, throw down a design, and then say, bye, I'm out of here. We want to make sure that they understand every single decision together with us. So it's extensive, but I think that is what makes us different than a lot of people in the field. Because, and we often stay in touch for a very long time afterwards, also by contract or not, to stay in touch, because of course it's not something that's done in just a year. Does that kind of answer your question? Sorry?
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead, Dan.
I think that's true. Yeah, the other thing with our work is it doesn't, we get paid, we get done. My relationships really don't end with the client. And that's the great part of it. You know, I'm not just putting in a bunch of hardscape outdoor kitchen and walk away, right? It's like I have relationships with most of those people going on for years, which works for me because they're all mapped on Google Earth. I can go see what's going on in their property and talk to them, or they'll email me about an issue that they have, right? And our best marketing comes from our clients, right? People see the work. You know, it's like having a really good restaurant. People talk about the food, right? And they also get to, then you're going to find other things. So, and that's, especially if you're working locally, that's what's going to help you a lot is keeping a relationship, a good relationship with the clients. That being said, just have to say there are times when we walk away, and you kind of have to understand very quickly, sooner the better, when this is a train wreck or I don't, you know, I'm not a good fit is a better way to put it. This isn't a good fit. And you decide that they need to go, you know, find somebody else to work with. Because there's, like with any business, there's a lot of situations where people are just soaking everybody. And I've found this out in the past. They're just calling a bunch of people, trying to get all the information they can from a bunch of people, not really hiring anybody. And they're just kind of wasting your time. You know, with that, there's so much information online anyway. I don't know why they just don't watch 800 more YouTubes. But our focus is, and by the way, I have to say, I go back to the course in UD, we accelerate the process. If you want to learn ecological design really fast and you want to get mileage really fast, that's where I think UD has a great offering to people. Through the course, it's very intense. You'll learn the skills and immediately you can apply them to your work the same day, the same week, the same month, whatever you need to get done. Yeah. So we accelerate the process for our clients. Bill Mollison used to say, sit on your property for a year, learn what it is. We can probably do that in about 2 weeks because we know what we're looking at. We've seen it before. And like I said, we have this whole data table and this research that we do on properties. And also we have our nose and our eyes and our fingers. We can tell what's going on in the property just by showing up there. So that's acceleration of the process and acceleration of the income and the career is what UD is all about for our designers.
Did that answer properly, Tristan?
Yeah, and some. Thank you. It's, I mean, you could go on forever about this. It's so interesting. It's really interesting what you said about, you know, defining your boundaries, you know, before you even start interacting with clients and what they are, because right, especially if the work's not necessarily consistent, and projects can get you excited, and then you find out that actually the guys behind the project aren't so good to work with, perhaps. Then there's that battle in your head about whether you take it on or not. But yeah, I suppose like the rationale for me asking that question is to try and understand better about what the hooks are, to getting people to kind of follow through with not just approaching you, but wanting to carry the project forward. And like I come from an academic background, right? So I get excited when I see data, and you can talk to me about plant traits all day, and I'll have a great time. I'll bash open a gin and tonic with you. But like it's and trying to understand people that aren't from my background, what gets them excited about all this. And it just, as soon as I saw the design examples on your website and whatnot, it seemed to me like a great way to kind of big picture zoom out and create the visual narrative, create the storytelling, like you were saying, that I don't have a lot of experience in. So yeah, it all sounds it's really encouraging. It's really exciting to hear more about it. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so
I
much.
wanted to mention too, when you're talking about getting people excited. So we have 3 phases. They pay for each phase. The first 2 ahead. Phase 1 is paid up front. Then you deliver, you make your presentation. When that one's done and they want to move on to phase 2, they're usually pretty excited, right? They've learned about it. You have good graphics, you have good documentation. Maybe they have a 3-ring binder full of all this information. They're excited about it. Then you move on to phase 2, and you should expect a check at that time to get started. And usually it's not a problem. Phase 3 is the final design, lots of details, all the reports, lists of things, and then you're paid after that once it's delivered. And that's only fair. A lot of times people are delaying, or you'll deliver it, you don't hear from back. It's like me, it's like, oh, they hate me. Oh, I did it. I screwed up. When really it's their life. Something happened. They had other things going on. Even in the course, some of our students disappear for a month or 2, and then you hear, well, they had something in the family. They had something going on. Not a problem. So that's really how we see it, is we just do the work, deliver the best we can, and the rest is up to them. If they don't move on with it, there's might be good reasons for that. It might be, relationship reasons, family, whatever it might be. I went all the way to design with a client, and then they sold their property. We're in phase 3, and they said, yeah, we sold the property. I said, you did? I said, yeah, we saw another one. And I don't even know, I don't know how people jump around like that. But anyway, can you just finish that one for the new owner? Do you just finish it for them? And I'm like, well, tell you what, why don't we just start the base maps on your new property, right? Because of course now I have 2 designs out of it. Let's just move on your new property, and we'll just use what's left to do your base map and your design work, concepting on your new property too. So you can't really assume anything, and it's not wise to do that. All you can do is keep in touch with people. And by the way, the thing about working well, when you do the proposal, you want to find out as much as you can. You make a proposal to a client, and then you wait for the response. If they don't respond, you send a little email like, how's it going? Just wondering if you want to move ahead, right? If anybody pushes back, like, oh, I'm not paying you anything, right? I know that this is, I'm not going to give you anything you haven't even done yet. And if you get the attitude, you know where that's going, and it's nowhere you want to go. So that's you walk away from it. And that's from back in the creative fields, and even now, most people are great. Most people are super great because they think like us. They want to do these things. Absolutely. But as soon as you run into any kind of attitude, that's the time to really think it through and know that you might be wasting your time. And it's better to spend that time looking for other work.
Yeah, very much so. I also
Thank
wanted
you.
to add, Tristan, that what also has made our sell, so to speak, easier the last years is that Dan and myself have worked on several flagship projects that have a lot of attention in the media. We did work for the weather makers here in the Netherlands, who were written about in The Guardian, and they were on CNN about regreening the Sinai, and we're mentioned in there as a potential designers. I have just finished a very big project on Ibiza that has a huge marketing budget, so it's just imprinted everywhere. And getting those clients in, of course, makes your sell a bit more easy. So we're very glad with that kind of projects that have a lot of presence, because you can just show stuff, like, okay, this is what we've done. Which again comes back to the positive impact of being a network here. When you become part of our designers, you have the backup of, we try to publish everybody's designs, if they're according, of course, to our process and ethics, so that everybody gets that same limelight, so that we can all have that presence, broad presence. So
Fantastic. Thank you. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Good. Okay, guys, I think we've almost been here an hour and a half, so I would like to say, if final round, anything missing? Otherwise, I think we could round it up for today. Nope, nothing missing.
If you have any other questions, think come up, you can always email us on the website, things like that. You can find us. Any more discussions, please do. And always happy to talk to anybody at any time about the course, about design, permaculture, ecological design, things like that. Because we're really trying to raise the standards of permaculture and raise the accessibility of people to get into permaculture and design, working as a community.
Awesome.
Just a really simple question. When does the next quarter start, if one was to join?
Now. Next week. Next week.
Okay.
No, we have honestly, Tristan, we have tried to push people into these quarters, but they're not set in stone. If you decide a week later to come in, you will also get access. But it's more been for Dan and I. Sometimes we've had some really busy classes. Sometimes it was less busy, for us to have the opportunity to enough one-on-one attention if required. So that's why we tried to push them into the quarters, but it's not set in stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
We're very good when you want to get in, when it works on your schedule, because it is about personal time, your space, right? That's not a problem for us. So whenever it works for you, it works for us, and we can start from there.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
But thank you, everybody.
Yes,
Thanks so
thank
much.
you
It was very
very
valuable.
much. This is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel next week. So anybody who wants to share the recording in their network, if they think it's necessary or useful, please do so. Okay, guys.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Ruska.
Take care. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.